further ado, I'd like to invite the three candidates for clerk to come on up. We have Ian Bain, we have Andrew Cacciavelli, we have Mark Kahn. Please come on up. So the candidates don't take a seat. Candidates, when you see the big yellow paddle by the timekeeper, that means you have 30 seconds. That's 30 seconds to finish up whatever it is that you have to say. Any questions? Take a seat, gentlemen.
Do I have to sit?
If you want to stand there, Mark, that is your God-given right to stand up.
Sat all day.
Do I have any questions by either Deanna or Brent?
Yeah, but
Press and hold for about 2 seconds.
I have a couple questions. Are we going to have them introduce themselves and a little bit about themselves in the beginning? And are we going to have a follow-up if they're actually pointed out by name of the 15-second rebuttal?
The answer is yes to both.
Okay.
Yeah, 30 seconds on the rebuttals.
Okay.
Okay? All right.
The-
Brent,
the-
are you clear?
I'm talking about the 30-second rebuttal, the 30-second per each question, but the 15-second if they're actually pointed out, or is that what we're doing again, or no?
Just like we did the last time.
Okay. Do you
And
understand that?
if it starts getting a little crazy with the rebuttals, I will cut it off. All right? Good stuff.
I
All right, so
understand.
Ian, would you like to grab the mic and start off, please?
Hi, my name is Ian Bain. I live up in the winery area. I'm running for county clerk. And is that all I'm saying? Is that all that's me.
Andrew, you're alphabetically next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Cacciavelli, and I'm running for Nye County Clerk.
My name is Mark Kahn, and I'm running for Nye County Clerk.
Is the volume okay back there? Everybody here? Hear them well? Good. All right. So, Deanna, Brent, I turn it over to you.
Thank you all for being here tonight. In March, county commissioners asked the Nye County Clerk to consider moving to an all-paper, hand-counted ballot system ahead of the June 14th primary, following testimony about unproven conspiracies and doubts about the 2020 election results. No other county in Nevada has such a system, and many constitutional experts question if the practice would even be legal. As the clerk who would largely administer our local elections, would you accept or reject the commission's recommendation to have an all-paper, hand-counted system in Nye County? This question is for each candidate.
These cards.
Who's first?
Yeah, draw the card to see who goes first, please. Who has the card? All right, we're going to flip the coin then. Just choose down there. You decide. You want to start in alphabetical order for the first one?
I'm going to start with Andrew Cacciavelli.
Thank you. I would agree with the county commissioners, even though there's a question, like you pointed out, if it's even legal. The Heritage Foundation, which is a Republican think tank, which was founded in 1973, did an unbiased report and ranking of every single state in the union. And guess where they ranked the state of Nevada? Dead last, 50th. So whether we go back to the old system of paper ballots or we evolve into new systems, which eventually I think we will, I'm all in favor, until we get this stuff all straightened out, going back to the paper ballots.
We'll just go down the road now.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes. I fully support the hand count paper ballot process, eliminating the Dominion machines, going to secure ballot paper that can be verified and not easily copied. If you're aware, our current process relies totally on the Dominion machines. And in a recent hearing with a proposed Biden FEC commissioner, Ted Cruz asked this FEC commissioner if they had signed an affidavit in 2018 that there were switching of votes in Georgia. And her answer was yes. Even Kamala Harris testified in front of Congress that the Dominion voting machines are suspect. I fully believe that with a well-controlled, properly monitored process, we can have security in our vote. I have met with so many voters since I started campaigning in September who have told me how upset they were with the process. And I felt that it's important to restore voter confidence in our county and serve as a model for the rest of the country. I'm also supported by cybersecurity experts who want to see me be successful in this process, and we plan on doing it the right way.
We have to go back to a traceable method of voting. Yes, paper ballots. When I started in politics in the late 90s, they were all paper, and it was much larger jurisdictions than Pahrump and Nye County. So I don't really see a practical argument saying that it's impossible to do. And these people would usually wrap this up around 10 o'clock. You'd know who won what election. So I think the issue here is there's 2 points, and one is the legal question, and the other is the practical question. Of course, using citizens like yourself, of course we could pull together and find a way to count by hand. And of course, we can't have foreign operators deciding who's winning our elections. It shouldn't even be asked, the question. But the problem is the legal side. What's going to happen is whoever takes this office is going to have to face an onslaught of people who will do anything to manipulate the law, to lie and to cheat, to do whatever it is they can. And unfortunately, the person who takes this office will either have to do one of two things: cave to the pressure, partially or completely, or fight. And I've said it before, and maybe I didn't say it the right way in another forum, but it could come down to an elected clerk would have to stand on the side of the Constitution, even face whatever authorities would try to insist on going to these machines, these foreign operators. You have to be able to stand on the side of the Constitution, and whatever the consequences, you have to be willing to face those. And it's tough when you have all these authorities coming at you and the political establishment coming at you.
All right. We have a 30-second rebuttal period, if anybody would like to rebut anything. All right, we're going to go to our next question. For more than 6 years, a growing number have called the move to Nye County's seat of government from Tonopah to Pahrump. If enough constituents endorse the measure to force the clerk to approve a citizen-led ballot initiative, would you support relocating the county seat? We're going to go to Mark.
Well, where the county seat is officially located does not affect the service that you provide to the citizens. There are a lot of citizens that rely on the offices in Tonopah for the court system, for their marriage licenses, for their registrations. So that office would need to stay in Tonopah in any event. So it doesn't matter where the actual county seat is located. The functions would still need to maintain their location there, because we're not just Pahrump and Nye County. I've been all over this county and met some really great people. It's a good 5-hour drive to get to the other side of this county, so you have to serve the citizens. My goal as a county clerk is to ensure that we raise the level of service to all the citizens, to make sure that they get the kind of response that they need, and they're not frustrated with the clerk's function and what's done in that office. I think we have a lot of opportunity for growth and improvement, and as this county grows, we need to maintain that service to all of them.
I don't think that where the county seat is, it should affect the county clerk's job, so I don't know the relevance of that. And if a ballot-led initiative, of course, you know, if that's what is considered, then maybe go along with it. I just don't see what the purpose of the question is with regard to that. I will throw in one warning about ballot-led initiatives. When I left Massachusetts in 2003, around 2004, there was a ballot initiative in Massachusetts to lower the taxes, and they sent that off to the House, the legislature, and the Speaker of the House said, nope, not going to take it up, and they refused to take it up. So I'm warning everybody in this room, they are going to start cutting things like that off, and we have to start fighting, and we have to meet their dirty tactics with law and order, or else we're going to have a very different community here.
One of the first questions when I visited Tonopah about a month ago, this gal outside Smith's parking lot, and I introduced myself as a candidate, and she, right off the bat, said, Andrew, if you become clerk, are you going to move the county seat from Tonopah to Pahrump? And I said, well, I understand that it means something. Just how much it means and how much of a difference it makes, I don't know. But I'm all for doing it the all-American way. Those people in Tonopah, Round Mountain, Amargosa Valley, Beatty, they are concerned with this county seat thing. I just don't want to sweep it under the rug. I think we should do it the all-American way. Everybody should have a seat at the table, the pros and cons. And finally, what do the people of Nye County really want? They're concerned in Tonopah that when I become clerk, if I become clerk, that I would remove, diminish services. I assured those people there that services would not be diminished. Let's put it up for an all-American vote. The entire county, not just Pahrump, will have a seat at the table. Let's put our heads together and figure it out.
There's something I'd like to say in addition to that. I've already gone to Tonopah, and Brenda and I have bought a 7,500 square foot lot right there in the town. I plan on moving my trailer up there, and if I'm not working as the treasurer over the summer, plan to build a stick-built home. This is a clear, concrete demonstration of my commitment to maintaining the service to both the northern part of this county and the southern part of this county.
Thank you. Are there any other rebuttals?
As moderator, please repeat the question.
The question is, if enough constituents endorse the measure to force the clerk to approve a citizen-led ballot initiative, would you support relocating the county seat?
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that I actually hit it because I wasn't hearing a lot of clear answers on that. One of the things I want to make sure as a moderator is when a question is asked, it's actually answered and not the bush being beat around. So it's part of my job. Carry on.
For this question, we will start with Ian. Nevada does not require voters to present identification while voting in most cases. A voter in Nevada simply must sign their name in the election board register at their polling place. The signature is compared with the signature on the voter's original application to vote or another form of identification, such as a driver's license, a state ID card, military ID, or another government-issued ID. Do you support this policy? Why or why not?
I think we need voter ID. I think we need to do as much identification of who is voting as possible. I would support any and all efforts to accomplish that.
Not only do I support that, but I have been working with an organization called Right to Vote to collect petitions, signatures on petitions, to get this on the ballot for the next general election so that the voters can decide whether they want a voter ID. That way, so after we take back this state from the Democrats and we implement voter ID as Republicans, we will then only leave it up to the voters to change that, so that as the winds change, as they invariably do, that any legislation cannot remove that without the voters approving that in a ballot initiative. So we want to get it into the vote. We want to make sure that only the voters can change that in this state, and no elected official can change that. I think it's an important thing. In addition, on that ballot initiative is to remove the universal mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting. We're going to take that back this state by beating the Democrats at their own game, by getting out the vote, curing ballots, but once this is over with, we need to eliminate that forever.
Okay, I also support showing ID, government-issued picture ID. The more government-issued picture ID, the better. Voting is a sacred right. We should keep it sacred. I like to get government ID, agree with it.
Are there any rebuttals to the question about showing ID at the polls?
Stand by 1 second. Yolanda Magley, where are you? Raise your hand. There you are, in the back of the room. So we're going to be able to take audience questions at some point in time. She's going to walk around. You have to write them down legibly so we can read them. So if you happen to have any, just see Yolanda. She'll come up the middle aisle, get her attention, and she'll hand you a card. You can write down a question, turn it back in, and they'll be pulled out of a hat. Carry on.
In 2016, 1/4 of all votes in America were cast by mail. Since then, more jurisdictions have moved to allow vote by mail options in an effort to make it more convenient and safer for voters to cast ballots, especially in the pandemic. While the measure has increased voter turnout all over, critics have said it had political consequences. Do you support allowing legally registered citizens the option to vote by mail? Also, I have to correct you, Brent, it's Nevada, not Nevada. He just moved here, he knows how we are. I know, he's from the South, we'll fix it. All right, the first, you know I'm just fooling with you, right? Want to see you turn right. All right, it's gonna go to Andrew.
It's a great question. My grandfather told me that there were only two ways, long time ago, 50, 60, 70 years ago, to get a mail-in ballot. And only two types of categories that were eligible. One was obviously military personnel serving overseas and could not cast an in-person ballot. You can't have voting machines in Germany, Italy, France, or wherever. And the other was people that had to basically prove a legitimate handicap and then basically just ask for a mail-in ballot. Boy, we've come a long way. One of the problems with mail-in ballots, and I understand that whether you say Democrats or Republicans or independents, they use this COVID as an excuse and a cover to expand the people who are getting unsolicited. I received an unsolicited ballot. And basically, one of the problems, you've got many problems with these mail-in ballot drop boxes. Where's the chain of custody? Too many ballots out there, nobody responsible, everybody throwing their hands up in the air. Who's responsible for the drop boxes? Chain of custody. This has opened up a totally new problem with these mail-in ballots. We have to figure it out. I'm the guy to figure it out. Thank you.
In the 2020 election, about 60% of the voters in this county did take advantage of the mail-in ballot. Even though the mail-in ballot was instituted in the primary election where about 9,969 voters voted, there are no statistics that tell us that and how many voted. My concern with the mail-in ballot is the chain of custody problem. We send a file to a company in Arizona called Runbeck. We provide them with that file, and they print our ballots, print the envelopes, stuff those ballots, and then they are responsible for mailing out those ballots. Then the post office takes custody of those ballots and then delivers it to the voter. And anybody that's done any canvassing in this town can tell you that that voter database is an absolute disaster. With 50% of the people leaving this county not filling out a change of address forms, there are ballots floating all over the place. Turning that over to a third party in Arizona, the printing and mailing, is a risk that we should not take in this county.
Is the question how we feel about mail-in ballots? Is that the actual question? Sorry.
Do you support allowing legally registered citizens the option to vote by mail?
You know, in 2020, a friend of mine, Jesse Law, who was actually the Clark County Republican chairman, he was with the Trump campaign at the time, and I went around, we drove around in Las Vegas, and we saw these ballots just blowing around in apartment complexes and just loose, and we have no idea where they were. We report them, and no one seemed to care, and we just sort of, you know, where do you go from there? I grew up very poor, and I live in many apartment complexes. Anybody who does knows that there's a place where mail is stored, and there's just all the mail, just all on the ground. That's what they're counting on. They're counting on all the mail to be junked on the ground so that people can simply pick it up and then vote for whoever it is, and then everybody laughs off any consequence. I absolutely oppose any kind of mail-in ballot, and I haven't done the research on it yet, but it sounds to me like, you know, voting is a fundamental right, it's a constitutional right. The exception to the going down, actually voting in public, or in a way that we do here, primarily, is for those people like military personnel or people who can't make it. So that's the exception to the rule. But like everything else in this country, you turned it upside down. And now the exception to the rule has become the rule. I absolutely oppose mailing all these live, hot ballots all over the place to people so they can blow around in the street, and we have no idea who these people are, and that they are counting on us not having the resources to verify who it is that's actually voting. That's their plan, and mail-in ballots cannot be part of ours.
Are there any rebuttals?
I'd like to add on to my comments in that you indicated that they use signature verification. The signature verification is anyone can testify that's come into this Bob Rudd Center and sign that keypad with your signature knows that that doesn't look anything like your signature. And when you're in a hurry to do that signature verification, people make mistakes. AB 321 requires that all poll workers get signature verification training.
Thank you.
So, just 1 second, I just want to clarify some for the rebuttals for the candidates up here. Let's not use that as an independent of what your plan was to get an extra 30 seconds out of it. Thank you, Mark. I mean, I just want to clarify. This is to really rebut something that came up that was possibly, it was to rebut something that was possibly against what you said. Standing next to the receiver, we'll see if it works. The 30 seconds is to rebut anything that was counter to what you may have already said. So let's not use that as an extra 30 seconds just to add on to what you said, okay? No, I have plenty of batteries. What I need is just stand closer to this stupid thing. Okay, carry on.
Thank you. So let's pivot and talk about qualifications for the office. We'll start with Mark. Please describe your level of understanding of the functions of the clerk's duties, and what's your familiarity with the state election regulations?
Thank you. I have fully read NRS 293 and understand its principles. I've also read the new Assembly Bill 321, Assembly Bill 121 that was enacted on March 20th of 2020. I'm also the only candidate who sat in with the Secretary of State in January and February during the comment period on the implementation of the regulations associated with AB 321 and 121. I've also met with the clerk's office on 4 different occasions to make sure I understand what is involved. I've also spent time in in understanding the issues that are associated with the implementation of that, and I feel that I'm the best qualified because I understand those. In addition, because of my extensive systems and controls background as a accountant, controller, and a forensic recovery auditor, I understand and how to implement internal controls in not only the largest companies, but I plan on bringing those skills to this county.
The scope of the Nye County Clerk's office is extremely narrow. The first part, like Mark said, marriage licenses, legal documents, testifying in court. There's a lot of people that could do that. A lot of people that could promise it and deliver it easily. The second part is the tough part. The Nye County Clerk's office is responsible for making sure that elections are clean, not tampered with, and not manipulated. That's where my qualifications come in. I graduated a criminal justice school, one of the most prestigious criminal justice schools in America, with a degree in behavioral science. I am the candidate for this job. Since January 15th, I have got together this team, volunteers, former police officers, retired police officers, to keep their eyes and ears open for election fraud throughout the county. People, we are ranked, like I said before, 50th in election integrity. People around the country look at Nevada and say, those are a bunch of cheaters. This is very big. That's why I only make one promise. I don't make 50 promises. I will solve the election fraud. I'm already working on behalf of the people of Nye County and surrounding towns. I'm the man for the job to solve election fraud. It's a big problem. Think about it.
The reason why the clerk is elected and not appointed is because the clerk is to be a representative, just like in any representative democracy, in any position. You're supposed to be a representative of all of us, the voters. So that person's not supposed to be a practitioner of election law. You can hire those people. And I would say that the reason why it's elected is because it's that important. The people who framed the Constitution, wrote the Constitution, realized it was that important that the person be elected. So when you're elected and not appointed, you owe a duty, you owe a debt to the people who elect you. You owe a duty and a debt to the community. When you're appointed to a position, you owe a debt of gratitude to those who appoint you. So you always have to be careful with people who are appointed to things because they always owe something to those who they are appointed by. So here's the clerk, the most important thing that everyone has to realize, and it's a wonderful thing. Some other states have things like assessors that are elected. I think that's a wonderful idea. But here, with the clerk, the primary responsibility is to ensure that the people's interests, not the political establishment, but the people's interests are represented. And that person should not be with their head in a book trying to practice election law. And I've been finishing law school the last couple of months, so I haven't read myself. But they have to represent people fiercely, and they have to not back down in doing so.
Okay, does anybody have a rebuttal?
Yes, I have a rebuttal. Mr. Conchavelli, who pretends to defend the law, has broken many of the election laws that are in place. He put signs up within over 120 days rather than the 60 days. He placed signs on right-of-ways. He attached signs to stop signs, to hospital signs, and others.
And Andrew, you have a 15-second rebuttal since you were pointed out.
I'd just like to thank Mark for keeping this debate clean and not taking any shots at people. Thank you.
I do want to make a note that the next two questions, actually, you guys kind of answered them. That last question was actually, tell us what the state election regulations are and the functioning of the clerk's office. The next ones actually talk about your experience and your leadership style and what qualifies you to be Nye County Clerk. And we are going to go to Ian.
I have been a small business owner for over 20 years. I can't recall when. The thing about being a small business owner is that you don't have a department to rely on for legal or for advertising or marketing or billing. You have to do everything. And in a position like the county clerk of a county this size, you have to be able to keep costs down, keep taxes down, and do everything yourself, pretty much. And you can rely on yourself. So being a small business owner, that's important. When I was in the Army Reserve, I was in a training battalion. I was blessed with it, turned around my life, and I was blessed with seeing operations from watching through a drill sergeant unit, and watching how kids came in and soldiers left. And what a better way, there's no better way rather, than to see how to train people and to manage. And I think I get a lot of my management from that, even though it didn't feel like a very big part of my life. Of course, I'll be graduating law school in a couple months. I'm 48 years old. I would not advise that to anybody unless you really love the law. But of course, knowing that law, you can do certain things as the court clerk and understand the language. But more importantly, 23 years of political advocacy for conservative causes. I know how to fight the political establishment. The political establishment is coming for your vote, and it's not just the Democrats doing it either. So that's probably the most important qualification I have.
I've had over 40 years of leadership experience with large companies. I could say as with my British Petroleum experience, I ended up in my last part of my career there as controller of their Alaskan oil operation, running an accounting and control department of over 100 people. I also, in the forensic audit firm that I worked for, I was vice president of operations for their entire operations with $40 million worth of responsibility, and I have always been a leader. But the kind of leader I am is the type that right now, as the appointed Nye County Treasurer, been thrown into a situation that's very difficult. I'm the type that rolls up my shirt sleeves and gets involved. I don't just command and direct. I get involved in the process. I understand what the people are doing for their job, and I get involved with what they're doing. And I think those skills are very critical to a process, because the elections and the Fifth Judicial Court is a process that needs to be well controlled and maintained.
Are there any rebuttals? This question comes from a member of our audience. Adele writes, I became a U.S. citizen 4 years ago so I could legally vote. Why should it even be up for debate? We'll start with Mark on this question. So the question is, a person who became a U.S. citizen 4 years ago so they could legally vote, why is it still even open for debate?
Only U.S. citizens should be allowed to vote. One of the problems that we have structurally in the way we use our databases is that there is no connection between the Secretary of State and Clerk's office and the information that comes out of ICE. They keep that information from the Clerk's office, so we cannot find out who is a legal or an illegal voter. You can go to that DMV office and you can get a driver's license with sometimes some of the most minimal information that's available. And as long as you raise your right hand and swear that this is the truth, there's no further investigation of it. In addition, one of the databases that's used is called ERIC, and it's funded by George Soros, and 31 states have signed into this database, and that opens us up to illegals being able to get in, capture an identity, and go into a vote as an inactive voter with no voter ID.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be for debate, only citizens to vote. It's obvious, right? About 1 million people who are non-citizens in New York are going to vote this year. And it's because the political establishment, the Republicans, have backed down from the political establishment in that state and have given up. I remember sitting in the GOPAC office, I think it was 2000, must have been before 2004, and I was told that George Bush had given up on California. The Republicans had officially given up on California. And I've watched over the course of my political career, and being again 48, getting into 25, what a miserable existence that is, right? It's politics my whole life. I've watched as we've kind of given up this and given up that and given up this. And if we give up too much more, there's not really going to be have anything to protect anymore. So all I would say about that is that, yeah, you have to be a citizen to vote. I can't believe that's even a question. I agree that why is it even up for debate that we should have non-citizens voting? It makes absolutely no sense. But the reason why is because we have decided that some certain people who are elected, that they're not going to stand up, they're not going to fight because it's too uncomfortable for them. And these are very distinguished people who've been doing it for a very long time. And that's why I'm running, because we need to make sure we have fighters in there who will stand up to these people.
Okay, I agree. The person is a citizen, they're legitimate, they're within parameters and compliance of the law. They have the right to vote. But I also want to add that when Mark talked about leadership and systems and all that, my leadership's a little bit different. I go after the bad guy, and I catch the bad guy. And if I don't catch him, he's walking around looking over his shoulder. You don't have to make arrests, you don't have to rough people up. Voting, election fraud is much different than your regular average bear crime out there, violent stuff. Election fraud is like schemers, manipulators, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a different challenge for me. I am definitely more well-equipped more than these two candidates up here today, because like I said, I'm already doing it since January 15th. You're gonna have to go up against elected officials at some point. You're gonna have to go up against entities like the DMV that shirk their responsibilities. Are these candidates strong enough and have the perseverance and the wherewithal to go up against these power structures? I don't know. I don't speak for their platforms. I know that I'm going to go hard after this. And I'm not going to make a promise that I don't intend on keeping. I intend to solve this thing. I'm already working on your behalf. I already have my proven systems in place with state-of-the-art catch the bad guy systems. I'm the man for the job. I'm the one that has the coyotes. I'm going to do it.
That's
I'm
time,
not scared.
sir. Time.
All right, is there any rebuttals? All right, we do have a question from the audience that we kind of already asked, but we're going to ask it again. The Nye County Clerk's Office, one function is elections and voting. What are the other functions that the Nye County Clerk's Office performs? Ian?
Marriage licenses, business licenses, clerk of courts, and you could go to the website, and it would all be right there for you. Thank you.
And the next one is Mark.
The clerk's office, primarily in Pahrump, supports the 5th Judicial District Court. 2 judges, Wonker and Lane. They have a deputy ex officio clerk in the courtroom who records the proceedings. They receive documents that come from the attorneys and the judge, and then those documents are entered into a system of record for the 5th Judicial Court so that there's a document associated with all those. Those records go back almost to 1865, and they're stored all over the county. It's actually become a problem because those files have gotten so big and so large that there's almost nowhere to store them. So as far as the functions in addition to the elections and those few other functions that have been mentioned, really it's a very important function to support that 5th Judicial District Court.
A similar question. The first part of the office is pretty easy. It's cataloging, indexing, preserving making sure documents are genuine and real, and sometimes going to court and attesting to that fact. That's the easy part. I'm talking about the other part, being a watchdog and being a pit bull on the elections. I'm already doing that, as I indicated before. And I have the confidence and courage and the perseverance and the wherewithal to do it. The second part is the difficult part. Who's going to do that? Are you going to do it? Are these guys going to do it? I'm already doing it. That's it.
Are there rebuttals? Okay, we'll continue with Andrew to start off with this one. In Nevada, we have closed primaries. Voters may or may not choose to affiliate with a political party. However, affiliation with a party is required to vote in primary elections. However, 23% of Nevada voters are registered as nonpartisan, which means nearly a quarter can't cast meaningful votes in our primary elections. Would you favor open primaries to allow nonpartisan voters to participate more broadly in the democratic process? Starting with Andrew.
No, absolutely not, under any circumstances. Each party has their own primary. Now let's keep it that way.
Actually, all voters have an opportunity to participate in the primary process. There are 40 different ballot types in this primary. For the Republicans, there are 18 different ballot types that divide up the 35 precincts into school board district 1, 2, 3, 4, the commissioners' districts, so that each one is properly identified to that individual in that precinct. The Democrats have 12 different ballot types, so they vote on also, for example, the nonpartisan sheriff elections. So all the candidates that are in office are not partisan. Even the nonpartisans, that 23%, there are 10 different ballot types. They vote for Board of Regents, they vote for judges, they vote for the sheriff, they vote for other nonpartisan offices that are in there. So there are actually 40 different ways that you can vote in this county, and it covers every single voter, no matter who they are, whether they're independent, Green Party, natural law, libertarian, Democrat, or Republican.
I don't support non-Republicans deciding who the Republican Party nominee is. No, I don't support that. And I don't even know why we're asking a question. It's interesting because Coca-Cola won't let non-shareholders vote for, Coca-Cola does, right? And we're not supposed to let non-citizens decide what we do for our country, with our country. So it's an interesting, provocative question. It just shows how, what the direction we're going into here in today's day and age. Thank you.
Okay, any rebuttals on that? What changes will you make to the functioning of the clerk's office if elected? We're going to start with Andrew.
I've never run for office before. I've never held a clerk's post, but I can tell you right off the bat that whenever I go into the clerk's office here, they always give me 5-star treatment. And I intend on maintaining that treatment. That's the first part. If you have to get a document, there's going to be no preferential treatment. Christians, Jews, and Muslims are not going to be given preferential treatment. Race, sex, gender, whatever. If you're supposed to get a document, you get a document, no matter who you are. There's going to be no favoritism. My grandfather used to say, I'm all for favoritism. And I said, Grandpa, what do you mean by that? When it's for everyone. But I said, Grandpa, then it's no longer favoritism if it's for everyone. And he said, bingo. That's the way you treat people. Notwithstanding the EOE laws and all these discriminatory laws that we have, the federal laws. Somebody comes into my office to get 5-star treatment. And if they have issues, I'm going to help them, and my staff's going to help them to get the documentation that they want and they need. So. That's what I'm gonna do.
One of the things I'm actually very excited about with the clerk's office, and I think it's a long time coming because I've seen other states that do this more than we do here, is empowering citizens to get involved in the process. One of the reasons why it compelled me into this race, I don't know if you remember in the 2020 election, there was one shot of it wasn't a clerk, it was a registrar of voters or whatever, same thing basically, is they were counting votes and it was a window and there was some guy who worked for the government and he put a big like cardboard thing blocking the window. And I looked at that, I just thought, what is going on? Why are they doing that? And it didn't make any sense to me and it bothered me on a level that I'm seldom bothered because I'm so cynical because I don't really expect anything in government except for corruption basically. So it didn't surprise me, but it did bother me. And I realized that we need to take that function back and we need to empower citizens. One of the things I would do is launch a very immediate and very serious and a very ongoing empowering, training citizens to become part of the process of counting and verifying and auditing every single election. That's not to take over proprietary jobs, but to ensure accuracy. And that's the power of us as a functions serves to make this government what it is. So that's what I hope to do. Thank you.
This question has really two parts. One, the way we handle the elections. One, I would eliminate the Dominion voting machines, go with hand count paper ballots, and ensure that we have the controls over that process to account them appropriately. Also, what we do with regard to removing the ghost voters off the voter rolls, we use a scattergun approach where we send out a letter. If it comes back undeliverable, then we pursue those. I would use statistical analysis, auditing techniques, so that we identify the high probability ghost voters, not the voter that's voted religiously every last 20 years, but the one who hasn't voted in a long time and then all of a sudden votes. Someone who might be suspicious because of their voting history or their, no offense, but 86% of the voters in this county are 56 years of age and older, but there's some that are 95 years old and haven't been verified in a long time. As a consultant, I've learned to not make assumptions about what you do as you go into an office. You sit down, evaluate the situation, and then make decisions as to what kind of changes you're going to make.
I'd like to ask a question.
Is
this working?
Can I rebut on one thing? I'd like a rebuttal, please.
I just want to clarify something about the auditing of the votes. While you can engage citizens to count the votes, only the Board of County Commissioners can authorize an audit of the votes. The clerk has no authority to authorize a forensic audit or any kind of audit of the votes.
How about now? I'm playing the channel game. Is this good? All right, so I have a question for you gentlemen.
Do we have like 15 seconds at the end?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Do your rebut.
I don't know what audit means as far as the letter of the law. I haven't read that, but I'd like to see that. And I'm very accustomed to having the political establishment tell me not to do certain things, electorally or otherwise. And that's the difference between someone who fights the political establishment and someone who succumbs to the political establishment. Very big difference there.
Oftentimes, candidates have certain requirements to run for offices, be it that they've lived in a certain area for a certain amount of time, or they have certain credentials for any given office. As the clerk, who's the one who accepts the registration for those various offices, what will you do to ensure that each and every person who signs up to run for public office has met the qualifications that may be part of that particular office in which they're signed up to run? Mark.
We have an unfortunate situation in our county, whereas if someone does not have the qualifications, the clerk even asked in some recent changes from Assembly Bill 440, and you can look it up, which establishes certain requirements for the sheriff. When the clerk was asked whether or not they would do any investigation to determine whether or not the person had met those qualifications, she said that as long as they raise their right hand and swear an oath that the information that they're presenting is true, that she would take no further action. The problem we have is that many of our election laws require on you as the citizen to file a complaint. As an example, if someone would question someone's residency as to whether or not they are actually domiciled at a residence, it requires a citizen to file a complaint, and then if that's determined to be frivolous, then that citizen would have to pay for court costs and for legal fees. And that can be circumvented in a lot of different ways. So the clerk needs to be more proactive in enforcing the law rather than passive and only dealing with complaints.
I've seen a lot of instances in Nevada where people in elected office did not fulfill what they're supposed to be fulfilling as far as executing these kinds of things. One specific thing that came to mind is the Secretary of State. There were two Clark County Republican parties, and I had a conversation with Steve Sebelius, who's a very pleasant guy, with the Las Vegas Journal. And I said to him, look, this lady at the Secretary of State has said that the Clark County Republican Party that says that they're the official Republican Party is not really the official Republican Party. Don't you think she has a duty to go back to those people and say, you're not the official Republican Party? And he goes, no, I don't really see that as a big deal. And that's what I hear a lot when I deal with regulators in these positions. I'm just a little shocked because, again, I grew up in Massachusetts. I haven't been back there in a very long time, but if you grow up there, and the one great thing about Massachusetts is the founders wrote all these documents, all these things, the town charters. These are written in the 1600s and 1700s. It's really an amazing opportunity to work under that. And I think that we're very lax in the state on rules and regulations and law and order. I don't know why, but that's got to change at every single elected office, not just court.
I was just talking with some of the sheriff candidates, and they said, Andrew, the only thing that's required is that you qualify with powers of arrest. Obviously, if you're a convicted felon, or probably I think gross misdemeanor, that would render you ineligible. But we're talking about guys that never graduated the police academy, don't have any law enforcement background, and they're basically, what makes them qualified to be sheriff or clerk or treasurer? It's a wide swath. It's a wide swath. And once you begin to narrow that swath down and say, well, you can only have sheriffs with 20 years, people with 20 years experience. Well, you cut out a certain segment, a big segment of the population that's interested in running for these offices. That's why you have this wide swath. And I think we should keep it that way. Notwithstanding the qualifications, you see the three of us up here, it's not only about qualifications and experience. It's about, can you get the job done? I'd rather have a guy with 3 years experience and gets out there and gets a job done than a guy with 30 years experience who's, like that. So that's why we have these roundtables and these debates, to figure out who has the tool set and who has the willingness and perseverance to get the job done. It's not all about your particular experience in law enforcement or whatever. Can you get the job done? Are you willing to get the job done? That's it.
Discussion, ready? Thank you.
Are there any rebuttals? Next question, we'll start with Ian. Mark addressed this kind of briefly before, but this is a question from our audience, who is a political canvasser. In 2016, they knocked on doors. The app they used had people who lived at the address on the list, but it was a mess. Many of the addresses had names that had not been there for up to 15 years. As clerk, what would you do to clean up the voting rolls? How would you remove people on the list that were deceased?
It's not difficult. It's not a difficult problem. It takes some genius in figuring out how to figure out if somebody really lives somewhere. There's all kinds of ways to do it. The problem that I'm suggesting is that there's no desire to do so. There's no desire to do so. There's two sides. One, there's certain people, let's be honest, incumbents do very, very well when challengers have no idea who's really voting, right? Because now they have to mail 10,000 more people or 15,000 more people or more. So overall, the lack of taking care of voter rolls and making sure you're purging people who should be purged, it's really incumbency protection, like many other things are. And again, it goes back to political establishment. So I don't think that there's a problem, a challenge, like we're too stupid to figure out if someone's died or not. There's no government resource to figure out if somebody's moved or not. Of course those are there. That's not a complicated problem. The problem is the intent there. Is the incumbent, including the clerk, once the clerk gets into office, is the incumbent going to actually do it? Or are they going to, I'm already in. I don't kind of like the people who are already in. Some of them have helped me out. Why would I want to help a challenger out? That's the issue. That's the problem. So I would just answer it that way. Thank you very much.
There is a system run by the Secretary of State that is the Bureau of Vital Statistics, provides information on individuals who die. The ERIC system provides them information on voters who are registered in 2 different states. And the post office provides the clerk with information on individuals who move. However, as I said, there's a problem with the 50% of the people who leave this county and they move and they may die somewhere else, and that information doesn't get back to the county. Right now, what they do is on an annual basis, they're required to send out a verification. And if that comes back, return to sender, then they send another letter out for verification. Then, if it comes back undeliverable, they're made inactive. And the laws of 1993 and the Help Voter Act of 2002 establishes that you have to be left on the rolls for 2 general elections until you take them off. As I said before, we're going to use analysis and use the county resources that you want me to use properly to focus on those voters that have the higher probability that there's a problem and spend the resources reaching out to them rather than the current scattergun approach.
Notwithstanding what the 2 other candidates have indicated, I will assure you that as my county clerk, I will use all the powers and all the tools available to me to remove people from the voter rolls that do not belong there. Thank you.
Is there any rebuttals? All right, we are going to have this question to start with Andrew. Early voting allows citizens to cast ballots ahead of the election at approved polling places in Nye County. Early voting runs May 26th through June 10th. Supporters of early voting argue it increases voter turnout among particular demographic groups, cuts wait times at the polls, and allows for the correction of errors in the voting process because clerks have additional time to review election data before certifying results. Opponents argue it can lead to ill-informed voting and increased cost for campaigns. What do you think of early voting?
I'm all for early voting. I know it is 10 to 13 days. It allows people to come in. I mean, not everybody, like the old times, could come in on that Tuesday, get a day off, get some hours of work off. I don't think it increases the chance of corruption. I could be wrong, and fraud, but for the most part, I like early voting. People could get out up to 2 weeks before the actual election day and cast their vote, not worry about it. So I'm all for it.
Just a correction, early voting starts on May 28th, not on the 26th. I do believe that what we have now is even earlier voting. The ballots are going to be sent out in mid-May, and so those ballots can be returned well in advance of that. And as you said, there is the potential for the correction of ballots and ballot signatures. If you made a mistake on your ballot, it's incumbent upon the individual parties to work to make sure that that process of ballot curing is handled appropriately. I personally prefer one-day voting like we did a long, long time ago. That way, citizens should be given a national holiday to vote. And if you have a national holiday to vote, there should be no reason why a citizen can't take that day and vote. If they use it to wash their car, or they use it to go to the movies, well then that's their problem. But this is a convenience for our citizens right now that we live with, but I would really prefer we go to a single day of voting, and only as long as that was a national holiday.
Something Democrats are much better than us at is taking what they can get. Democrats are in control of many things they shouldn't be, even though the vast majority of the population rejects it, because they'll take what they can get. I think early voting, it's mail-in voting, it's just taking what they can get to make voting so confusing, so convoluted, such a long experience where someone can just go on Twitter and press a button and vote. That's what they ultimately want. So that's all that is, I mean, let's be honest. I really just personally like the one-day voting. I don't really know why we need such a large window, and I don't know why we keep, other than, of course, the Democrats want it, to have all these different ways to vote, because now the next excuse is going to be, well, internet voting. The next excuse is going to be, well, phone-in voting, or proxy voting, whatever it is. So I really think that adherence to the Constitution, looking at the Constitution and the state, country, and the way things have been, I think we should just stick to that, and that works. And I personally like one-day voting. I don't know if I would tear off and do something right now because I don't know the legalities of it. I would obviously look at that. You have to look at that. But I prefer one-day voting as well.
I'll give some time for rebuttals.
I believe the specific question was for in-person voting. And Mark brought up mail-in ballots that are going out. That wasn't the question. Early in-person voting, or including mail-in ballots also? Okay, so it says nothing about mail-in ballots. Okay, so at a certain point in time, this is what my grandfather used to do. Get up at 6:30 in the morning, wait 4 hours in line. We have to evolve. And like Mark said, a national holiday? The national holiday, people are just going to take it
That's your time,
off.
Mr. President. Thank you.
Are there any other rebuttals? Okay. We'll move to some questions from the audience. If there is so-called election fraud, would that go for all races up and down the ticket, or only the races that didn't turn out the way you wanted them to? Based on this overwhelming evidence being found on election fraud in 2020, who do you believe won the 2020 presidential election? We'll start with Mark.
I believe that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. This is why I believe that. This is why I believe that. There's a movie about ready to come out called 2,000 Mules that shows the rampant ballot harvesting that happened in Georgia, in Pennsylvania. In addition, in Wisconsin, a judge found the election boards guilty of having individuals who were required to submit the right to have a mail-in ballot being given mail-in ballots. Mark Zuckerberg spent over $400,000, and the vast majority of that went to counties who accepted those dollars and funneled those dollars to Democratic districts that would be allowed to do that. In addition, there was a forensic audit that was just completed by the state of Arizona, and the Brnovich, the Attorney General, has working on indicting the Secretary of State who was responsible for those elections.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump won. I think it's obvious to anybody who watched what happened, and overnight everything changed. I've been watching elections, my whole adult life and politics. One of the things that is interesting from my perspective, U.S. Senator Scott Brown, who's a Massachusetts Republican who won, and he actually spoke at my retirement from politics party in 2004, when I sit up here on stage. But Scott won in 2000, I think 8 or 9. What was interesting about that is no one thought he was going to win, and then he won. I remember in 1999, I had somebody in my National Guard unit, and I said, hey, let's run you in this place called Chelsea, Massachusetts, which is 90% Democrat. And he came within 20 votes of beating a person who was the mayor at one point. And it starts to, after year of this, you start to wonder, what is going on here? How come every time Democrats think that there's no shot of a Republican winning, then all of a sudden a Republican wins? I think there's been fraud for a long time. I don't think this is a brand new thing. Welcome to the party, welcome to the club. I think that it's been a problem for a very long time. I was born in Chicago, and we all know in 1960 what happened there. So I think it's a problem that we have to be honest about and work towards fixing, and voter ID is really the only way to start to do it, and hand counting and getting rid of all machines operated by any foreign entities, or probably any entities at all. Paper ballots.
It is very obvious to people with even half a brain that Donald Trump won the 2020 presidential election. I can't verify it because I wasn't in Georgia, but I heard rumors that there were more mail-in ballots than registered voters in the state of Georgia. That's incredible. That's why I say the county clerk's job is to peel back the many layers. This is an insidious beast. It's not easy. It's not just mail-in ballots. We talked about it before. Where the ballots are dropped, the chain of custody, registering people as voters, illegal immigrants as voters when they're not supposed to be voting. The DMV, elected officials. It's a multi-layered labyrinth. Who's the person that's going to peel back all these layers? It's not just the mail-in ballots. It's a lot of other stuff. So yeah, Donald Trump won the 2020 election. And like I said, we're 50th in election integrity. I'm not comfortable with that. Are you?
Is there any rebuttals? All right. I just saw on the Board of County Commissioners' agenda on Tuesday that we're getting a new voting machine, or they're going to vote on that, but that has to do with this. Free and fair elections are a cornerstone of American democracy. Polling stations across the United States employ a range of methods in the voting process, including direct recording, electronic systems, ballot marking devices, punch card voting, and optimal scanners. What methods are you familiar with, and which do you endorse? We're going to start with Ian.
I've seen a lot of these over the years, and I don't really know what happens behind the scenes because I've been a clerk and I've been a registrar of voters. But I will say that in the old days, what happened when I started off in this business is people would vote, and then we'd have the machines, and they dispatch people to machines, and they kind of hand count or figure out what was going on in the machine, and they'd run the numbers back to a room, and then all the reporters would be standing there, people like me who work for campaigns or people running, would then wait for that person to come out and say, okay, this precinct, then you have 18 votes for this guy, 12 votes for that guy, and they call across town. I guess I prefer as much as possible the hand counting, documentation, things that you can take and dump on the ground and someone else can look at it and sort it out. And if it takes citizen volunteers, which I hope that we can do, to look at that and verify that people aren't lying to us, because I don't trust any of these people. I don't trust politicians pretty much anywhere, especially here, by the way. So we absolutely have to set up a system where paper ballots can be not only counted, but verified and even looked at 10 years down the line or 5 years down the line. We should have to hold on to this for a very long time.
The system you're referring to is called Agilis, and the Agilis system is sponsored by Runbeck. And Runbeck is the same company that's printing our ballots, mailing our ballots out of Arizona. And they have a very bad reputation amongst those who have done research into voter fraud and their ability to manipulate ballots, send ballots out to whoever they want to. While I understand that the objective that the clerk has proposed is that they would have an electronic image using the Agilis system, and then you would sign your keypad that's about as scribbly as signing the keypad at Home Depot. But it's like the camel's nose under the tent. Once the camel's nose is under the tent, then they're in. Then she'll say, let's go to the same process they used in Clark County, where the system verified the signatures, and you can dial the DPI, dots per square inch, of sensitivity up or down on that system. I have a real problem with this system going in. I think it's sending us down the wrong path, but the only reason they're doing it is because they've got grant money from the state and they want to spend it.
I am familiar with some of those systems, but not all. And I'm a realist. And I realize that eventually, one day, the way we vote is going to be totally different than what we do today. And I don't think I'm strong enough to blow back on it. But notwithstanding that, I'm all for any system that's going to help us verify and control and maintain the integrity of the vote. I'm all ears. I'm listening to all of these systems. Let's get the experts together, sit down at a round table, figure out what's going to eliminate or really chop down fraud and tampering. And then let's give it a shot. I'm a realist. We're going to have to change one day. We're going to have to change the way we do things. And to shut people out, shut these ideas out. None of them may be good, but let's just keep our ears open and listen. Maybe we can figure out a better way so that we don't have to do all these investigations and audits and all these other things.
Just very quickly, I didn't endorse any systems. I don't know if it was being asserted. If it was, I did not mean to endorse anything. I'm not sure how that was misconstrued, but I do not officially endorse any particular voting system. Thank you.
Are there any other rebuttals? Okay, next question. The county clerk is responsible for overseeing our local election process for Republicans, Democrats, and third-party candidates alike. Yet the office is a partisan race, meaning clerk candidates typically run under a party ticket. You're all Republicans here tonight, but would you support making the county clerk a nonpartisan race in the future? Why or why not? And let's start with Andrew.
Yeah, that's something I would throw up against the wall. We are all Republicans, and I wear the Republican insignia very proudly. I like to think I'm a team player. I've always been a team player. And I understand, the way it's configured now, even though the office is nonpartisan, and it's got to be fair. And it's got to be fair for Democrats, independents, even communists that walk through the door. They got to be treated fairly and equally. You want to change the law and make it nonpartisan, and then everybody could run for it? Hey, you know what? That's not up to me to decide. So, it's a nonpartisan office. People should be given decent treatment and 5-star treatment.
Well, I understand the concerns as to the participation. I've also seen the abuses of that participation. Has anybody tried to figure out where a judge stands on the issues? Has anybody tried to figure out what a judge stands for before they run? Have you tried to figure out what their party affiliation is? Where they stand on the Constitution? I know that as a Republican, I'm a constitutional conservative, and I stand for those principles that are embodied in our bylaws and in our Constitution. So I believe that as a Republican, I have the right to exhibit those principles and fight for those principles. However, as a clerk, I take that Republican off and I work independently to serve every citizen within this county. I won't set up organizations that might be there to prevent them from growing in their numbers in this county. And I believe that if the Democrats have a qualified candidate, they should put that candidate up. Well, why haven't they done that? If there was a qualified candidate, people would have an option. bring us a qualified candidate to the party, and we will then allow them to vote for that.
I think it should remain so do the Republicans and Democrats. Whoever wants to nominate, I don't think you should change that. I actually don't like that when you do the nonpartisan thing. It's very confusing to people. They don't know who it is, like he said. They don't know who they're voting for, don't know the background. I think we need to get more involved in knowing and understanding the people who are running for office and who they really are, than to just say, well, here's government guy who's endorsed by all the government people, go vote for him, and he's not a Republican or Democrat, he's not a man or a woman, and he doesn't really know how he feels about anything. Just vote for this guy, or whatever. And that's where we're headed. Again, you have to sort of look and see where we're headed as a society. So no, I'm all for, I think it should be like this. I've been an appraiser for a long time. You can spit in my face, or you can give me brownies, and your value of your properties will be exactly the same regardless. So I think that to insinuate that someone who's not going to take their job, their objectivity seriously, I mean, if that's really a problem, I would look to the person asking that question, as maybe it's their problem, that they can't control themselves. But I don't think that just because you run as a Republican, that means you're going to all of a sudden throw other people's votes in the garbage. Maybe as a Democrat, I don't know, but as a Republican, at least I would hope not. Thank you.
Is there any rebuttals? All right, and this is our last question. It's going to go to Mark. Nevada has an emergency absentee voting program. Absentee ballots can be brought to patients at a hospital in certain emergency circumstances. For example, if requests are made in writing and submitted by 5 p.m. on election day. As clerk, how would you oversee and certify absentee votes in this case? Do you have concerns that absentee voting is abused?
True absentee voting exists when someone is either incapacitated, they're working out of the country, they might be serving overseas as one of our armed forces. True absentee voting requires that you apply for that and provide an identification number of some sort. Your last 4 digits of your social security number or your driver's license number. Therefore, the clerk's office on true absentee voting can then submit that ballot, and then it can be submitted and back in to the clerk's office. That's really the best way to get things done. My concern right now is that with the current process, those ballots can be harvested. Now, the law says that you can currently go to a nursing home and ask them for their ballots, but you have to submit those within 3 days of receipt from that individual. Otherwise, it's a felony. So, although those controls exist, I think there's plenty of opportunity for abuse. I think the original verification method is the way to go.
Ian, the question again is absentee ballots, and are they abused?
Yeah, probably, again, like I said before, I mean, I believe there's voter fraud all over the place, and the problem is prioritization. Right now, the most important thing, and I don't think you should detract from this, is the fact that there are ballots blowing around anywhere there's a post office box, or anytime there's a mailbox, there's ballots are going to be blowing around in the wind, and anybody can grab those or steal those. Is not a priority. That's where you want to look first. Obviously, that's pretty bad. As far as, yeah, I mean, you enforce the laws in the books. A lot of people, a lot of elected officials have a problem enforcing laws, and I really understand that. It's very confusing to me. But it's not when you realize that they're all part of the same corrupt political machine. So I would simply say, yeah, I mean, you look at the law and you make sure the law is done correctly. If there needs to be some change there. I don't know what percentage of votes are done in that manner. I know that it's, for example, in law, when you have someone signing a will, there's certain rules, and people attest to that, and they've got to sign under their direction, and it's all the same stuff. You go and boil it down to common law. So I don't know if the question is necessarily, how should we make sure there's no voter fraud in this, or just what do you think of in general? I think right now the priority is the fact that we're mailing ballots out to people who didn't ask for them, and we don't know where they're going, and we don't know who's going to fill them out, or who's going to make sure they're the right voter. That's the priority. And anything that comes off of that specific problem, probably at this point, is a distraction. And that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I feel that there should be never an unsolicited ballot. We got to get rid of that. Of course, we could verify if that person in the hospital bed or nursing home or adult living center is a verified voter, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or whatever. We should verify this stuff before we send the ballots out, not after. Because after we send the ballots out, well, it's too late. So that's why I'm taking a proactive approach, launching preemptive strike against the fraud. We all saw what happened in the 2020 election. Donald Trump has a team of lawyers. I have one lawyer. And in each state he launched his rejection of the results. What happened? In every state, none of the judges overturned the electoral vote. Friends, people, we got to solve this problem before it happens. You see what happens after the horse is out of the barn. I'm doing it right now. We've got to stop voter fraud before it happens. Verify these ballots and absentee ballots before they go out. Thank you.
Is there any rebuttals? All right, we do have one question that is from the audience that we just wanted to answer. And it says, was Nye County Clerk Sandra Molino asked to participate in this debate so that she could rebut some of the disinformation, I think they mean misinformation, that is being put forth here tonight? And no, she was not, because she's not running. And so I also wanted to say thank you so much to all the candidates. And Mark, you can finally sit down.
One second. I'd like to give each candidate 30 seconds just to finish up. Last statement to the audience, and then we'll complete this.
Yeah, 1 minute.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Like I indicated before, we're dead last in election integrity. I am not comfortable with that. I'm already working on behalf of the people in Pahrump, Round Mountain, Amargosa Valley, Beatty, Tonopah. We have our eyes and ears open. It's a multi-layered approach. Ballot harvesting, illegal voter registration, people at the DMV entrusted with verifying information. There's a lot of people in this state, not just this county, that are dropping the ball on the election integrity. We need to solve it. We get closer and closer towards North Korea, China, Vietnam, Laos, Cuba. These are all out communist countries. Do you want the power structure picking your elected officials, or do you want it fair down the board? Because if we don't have fair elections, we might as well put this microphone down, stop all these meetings, and they're going to tell you who your elected officials are. Stop voter fraud. Stop it now.
Thank you. It's to follow up on what you said. I have the highest respect for Sandra Molino. I think she served this county well. I think there have been some issues that people have experienced along the way, but anytime somebody's been in office for that long, it's time for a change and for someone else to get in there and look under the hood. I think I've got the skills, I've got the knowledge of the process, I've got the integrity, and I've got the confidence to get in and do the job properly. As you can see this week, I was appointed temporary treasurer by the Board of County Commissioners. And I've gotten in there in a short period of time, figured out how to get the job done, and I'm already approving invoices, building morale, and getting things done. There's going to be a lot of concern about somebody new in there, and you need a morale builder, and you need someone who understands the process, and someone who can actually do the work.
An interesting thing happened to me about a year ago. The wife of an elected official, who I think is in this room still, said to me, she called me up and said, hey, I think I've kind of figured you out. You believe this stuff. Like, this is really you. This is why you do these things. You are driven on these beliefs. And it was such a weird thing to hear, and I've thought about it on and off. And I guess what I would say is that I'm a pretty simple person. I am guided by two documents, the Bible and the Constitution. And every time I'm asked a question, if on TV or radio, or I had a radio show, all things get funneled through those two documents. I strictly believe the Constitution, strict interpretation doesn't change based on society. That's what it is. And the same with the Word of God. And I do believe we're in a judgment. I do believe the prophet Isaiah was right. I believe that we are in judgment. I believe that God is walking away from us. And I think that that's why we're governed by children. If you look at the passage, I forget. So all I would say is that we need to make sure that we adhere to these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We're going to take a 13-minute break and get right back on schedule at 6:45. 6:45.
What?